call this meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Armstrong,
Here.
Ms. Chester,
Here.
Ms. Harwood, Ms. McLaughlin, Ms. Utman,
Here.
Mr. Warmbrun,
Here.
and Mr. Welch.
Okay, and we do have a quorum this evening. Any changes to our agenda?
No.
Okay. And we have minutes that were mailed out for the June 18th meeting. And if you have an opportunity to review those minutes, may we have a motion?
I move that we accept the minutes as drafted of the May 21st, 2014 meeting.
Do you have a second?
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes. The minutes are approved as drafted. We do have one written communication that has been handed out prior to the meeting regarding one of our cases. And we have 3 continued public hearings this evening. The first case is case ZBA-2014-C-03, a request for conditional use permit to establish a daycare facility at 211 West High Street in the R2 Single Family Residential Zoning District. And may we have the staff report?
That case will need to be continued to a further meeting.
Okay. So do we need to do anything formally to acknowledge a continuous? Just is done. Okay. Our second case, which is case CBA 2014-Major-02, a request by Fowler Custom Builders, LLC, to grant a major variance to install a shade awning encroaching 11 feet 4 inches into the required front yard at 804.5 East Main Street in the B2 Neighborhood Business Arterial Zoning District. And may we have the staff report on that?
Good evening. See if the meeting was correctly. Can you hear me?
No. It's,
There you go. Think we're in business.
Yeah.
There we go.
there you go.
For those of you I haven't met, my name's Max Mahalik. I'm the new planning intern, and thank you for joining us this evening. Now, Fowler Custom Builders, LLC, is applying on behalf of property owner Daniel Kiss to install a shade awning at 804.5 East Main Street, which lies in the B2 Neighborhood Business Arterial District. Now, Exhibit A from the memorandum illustrates the location of the subject property. It is located on the north side of East Main Street between North Weber and North Lynn Streets. And Exhibit F of the memorandum illustrates that the property is home to the King and Queen Beauty Salon. The structure currently encroaches 7 feet 4 inches into its required 15-foot front yard. And the Sanborn map showed that this structure was developed as laid out presently as early as 1915. Under Section 11-5 of the zoning ordinance, shade awnings are allowed to encroach 2 feet 6 inches into a required yard without a variance. However, the proposed shade awning will be 4 feet deep, which encroaches into the front yard of the lot by 11 feet 4 inches, leaving a front yard of only 3 feet 8 inches. This is a 75.56% reduction of the 15-foot required front yard, and pursuant to Section 11-3 of the zoning ordinance, qualifies as a request for a major variance. Now, Exhibit A shows again, the location of the subject property as well as the land uses surrounding the subject property, and it is marked by a mixture of land uses. Immediately to the west, we have the Rock of Deliverance Church, and immediately to the east, and sharing a wall with the subject property, we have Ray's Air Conditioning Shop. And to the east of that, at 808 East Main Street, we have a Mr. Gas Plus station. And to the north and south, we have mostly single-family residences as well as some institutional uses. Exhibit B is the zoning map for the area. As noted, the lot is designated B2 Neighborhood Business Arterial District, while the neighboring properties have that same zoning designation. And this lot, along with its neighbors, was rezoned from B3 General Business to B2 in 2008. The B2 district emphasizes pedestrian accessibility and basic businesses that will serve local residents. Meanwhile, to the north and south, we find the R3 single-family and two-family district, which, as stated in the name, is designated for single and two-family residences. Exhibit C of the memo illustrates the map from the 2005 comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan calls for this area to be defined as a residential urban pattern, which really emphasizes pedestrian accessibility and businesses that will serve the neighborhood. Indeed, on the map itself, there is an annotation that is cut off here, but it shows that along East Main Street, the comprehensive plan encourages neighborhood businesses that can serve the neighborhood. Exhibit D contains the application as well as the schematics for the proposed shade awning. And moving down to the schematics, we can see that the shade awning will be 4 feet deep by 4 feet tall and 15 feet long. Now, this is 1 foot longer than the number listed in the memorandum due to a recent correction. And as seen in the memo, there was a photo presented of a similar shade awning. As you can see, this shade awning, much as the proposed one, does not have any support columns. Exhibit E is a basic site plan of the proposed shade awning. It is important to note that this awning will run parallel to the shade awning or canopy that fronts the neighboring structure at 806 East Main Street Ray's air conditioning shop. And the Sanborn map showed that the shade awning in front of the neighboring property was constructed as early as 1945. Now, going to the picture of the exterior of the building. This was also included in the memo. And we see that the addition of a shade awning at the subject property would really improve cohesion between the subject property and its neighbor to the east. Moreover, it would provide an aesthetic benefit to the pedestrian environment, and it would also emphasize the historic character of the neighborhood, as shade awnings are often associated with historic structures. And this was emphasized in the written communication, which was provided to all the board members, and it is from a local business owner who just notes that the addition of this awning would improve the pedestrian environment and the aesthetics of the neighborhood. The applicant commented on their application that the awning would also improve the aesthetic value of the property, and the property owner, Mr. Daniel Kiss, commented over the phone recently that the shade awning would provide comfort for the customers of the beauty salon. Moving on to the variance criteria, the proposed variance would not serve as a special privilege due to circumstances related to the land or structure. As noted, the structure was built 7 feet 8 inches from its front lot, and there is no room for a shade awning that would encroach only 2 feet 6 inches into its required front yard. Meanwhile, the canopy of the structure located at 806 East Main is twice as deep as the proposed awning for the subject property. The second variance criteria, the variance requested was not knowingly or deliberately created by the petitioner. The subject property was developed as is as early as 1915. The third criteria, the variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. Currently, the neighborhood is defined by businesses serving residents who reside in the proximal area. These businesses are in historic, pedestrian-oriented structures. This installation will enhance the aesthetic value of the pedestrian atmosphere, as well as improve the historic character. Moreover, it will improve cohesion between the subject property and its neighbor to the east, or excuse me, to the west, and no other modifications are proposed. The fourth criteria, the variance will not cause a nuisance to adjacent properties. As reiterated, the building at 806 immediately to the west already has a shade canopy. Meanwhile, I'm getting my directions mixed up. I do apologize. The building located immediately to the east at 806 East Main Street already has a shade awning, while the church located just immediately to the west is set back 51 feet 8 inches from the street, so there will be no impact of the proposed awning on that church. And the fifth variance criteria, the request represents the minimum deviation required. The proposed shade awning represents the minimum variance needed to install a functioning shade awning, and the variance is no greater than that needed to have the proposed awning installed. The Zoning Board of Appeals has the following options: approve the variance as requested, approve the variance as requested along with certain terms of terms of conditions, which we ask to be articulated, or deny the variance request. If the request is denied, we ask the board to articulate its findings supporting the denial. If approved, this request will move to the City Council, and we require a 2/3 approval from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Staff recommends approval with the condition that the awning is built in conformance with the plans presented. City staff is prepared to answer any questions you may have, and if a representative from the petitioner is present, they would also be able to answer any of your questions. Great.
Any questions for staff? Charles?
So we have this brick wall that's even with the canopy of the place next door. This proposed is not going to even get to that brick wall, is that correct?
Correct. The building is set back currently 6 feet from that brick wall because that wall is 1 foot wide, and this shade awning will be 4 feet deep, leaving a 2 foot gap.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
This is the time of the meeting that we open the floor to the petitioner and any other members of the audience who wish to speak. But before we do that, I would like anyone who wishes to speak about this issue or any other issue this evening to please stand and raise your right hand. Anybody that's going to speak this evening before the group? Okay. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is truthful and accurate to the best of your knowledge? Okay, thank you. So is there anyone from the audience who wishes to speak on the issue of this particular petition? Do we have any questions? Does the board have any questions of the petitioners?
No.
Pardon? Okay. Are the petitioners here? Is there somebody representative? Okay. All right. All right, then do we have a motion? Nancy?
I move that for major variance case number CBA-2012-major-02, with a recommendation for approval subject to the following condition. The shade awning shall be built in conformance with the attached plans, Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C, Exhibit D, Exhibit E, and Exhibit F.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. And may we have the roll call?
Ms. Chester?
Yes.
Ms. Utman?
Yes.
Mr. Warmbrun?
Yes.
And Mr. Armstrong?
Yes. So that passes unanimously. That the case then goes to the City Council for final approval, because this is a major variance. And our second case this evening is case number ZBA 2014 Major-03, a request by Prairie Signs Incorporated for a major variance to install a sign that is 20 feet in height into existing non-conforming sign poles at 1303 East Colorado Avenue.
Good evening. So for this case, Prairie Signs Incorporated has filed a request on behalf of Dollar Tree to install a sign onto existing non-conforming poles at 1303 East Colorado Avenue. Dollar Tree has occupied that site since November of 2013. Most recently, that property was used as an Ace Hardware. So the existing non-conforming signs are 20 feet tall. Those did conform to a previous sign ordinance back before we amended our sign ordinance in 2009. And the petitioner would like to install a sign onto those poles that would be 20 feet in height, 50 square feet in area, and 18 feet setback from the property line. 50 square feet is allowable in the B3 district for the area, which is where this is. And signs in the B3 district can reach a maximum height of 16 feet. So the 20-foot height requested would represent a 25% variance in this case. That's why it's a major variance, because anything over 15% requires a major variance and approval through this board. So the site is located, if you look at Exhibit A, site's located along Colorado Avenue. If you're familiar with this area, it's just west of the Philo Road business corridor, just south of the County Market shopping plaza. To the west of the property are dental offices. To the east are commercial uses. Immediately to the east is a fitness center, and then east past that is the video store there, the Family Video, and Little Caesars. I will point out, as I do in my memo, that there are other existing signs along Philo Road and in this area that are 20 feet tall, or maybe even a little bit higher than that. According to our comprehensive plan, the area is meant to be used as community business. So the use as a Dollar Tree is compatible with our comp plan and with the larger area. And the property does exist sort of in a transitional area between residential to the west and to the south, and then the Philo Road business corridor to the east. So that's sort of the other surrounding uses that you see, the residential west and south, and then the business to the north and east. Now, if you look at Exhibit D, you can see some pictures that were supplied by the applicant. I went out, those are a bit dark. I went out on a brighter day, the only one we had all week, a couple weeks back, and took some more clear pictures. So those, if I can rotate these, let's see. So in Exhibit F, is that right? Bear with me 1 second. Okay, so in Exhibit F, you can see clearly the existing sign poles taken from different angles around the property. Apologize for the pictures not coming out as large as they should. I've been having some issues with printing. According to the applicant, to alter the sign poles from their current height of 20 feet to a height of 16 feet would require structural alterations, and they would, the petitioner or Dollar Tree would incur additional costs by having to alter those sign poles. So that's why they're requesting this variance. In addition, there is an existing fence on the property that they state could cause some visibility issues. So the fence is slightly to the east, as you can see in the photos. So the only visibility that it could impede would be coming from the east. So as I mentioned earlier, in 2009, the city of Urbana did amend our sign ordinance, and that was to do quite a few things. One was the amendment significantly reduced the height of signs that would be allowed Under the old ordinance, signs could be between 25 and 30 feet high, which are more indicative of automobile type design. And the new sign code was put in place to be more pedestrian friendly. Also to give a little more flexibility in allowing signs, especially monument signs, to be located closer to streets and to sidewalks. And just really to, I think, improve the aesthetics and to and the character of the city of Urbana. Now, in the zoning ordinance, it does state that signs not in use for a period of 6 months are considered to be abandoned, and they must be removed, including all sign supports and associated structures. These poles were abandoned for quite a few years. That's in the ordinance. In practice, we don't always make people actually remove the poles, and we're not recommending that here, but we are saying that that is in our ordinance. Additionally, if a sign has been removed from an existing structure for longer than 90 days, it is not allowed to be reestablished unless granted that ability by the Zoning Board of Appeals. And this sign, as you can see in Exhibit F, it didn't have a sign on it since at least June of 2012, and the last time there was a sign on it was, over 2 years ago when the Ace Hardware was there. So in terms of the variance criteria, number 1 asks if there are special circumstances or special practical difficulties with reference to the parcel and carrying out the strict application of the ordinance. On this property, the only special circumstance would be the existence of the non-conforming sign poles. And we as staff don't find that to be an exception or a very special circumstance or a practical difficulty, because there are other non-conforming sign poles in the city that would meet the same criteria. So it's not an exception or special circumstance. The existence of the fence that's currently on the property that the applicant points out could cause visibility issues. It was already existing on the property before, and if you look at the property from the east on some of these photos, it probably wouldn't be any more than really a minor blockage of that sign when approaching from the west. And the west is really a residential neighborhood, so some screening from the residential neighborhood probably wouldn't be all that bad. Variance criteria number 2 asks whether the proposed variance would serve or will not serve as a special privilege because the variance requested is necessary due to special circumstances, which are not generally applicable to other lands or structures in the same district. As I just mentioned, the existence or the variance really is not necessary due to special circumstances, because we feel that there really aren't special circumstances. Like I said, that situation is not unique to this property. And variance criteria number 3 is that the variance requested was not the result of a situation or condition having been knowingly or deliberately created by the petitioner. We don't feel that the petitioner bought the property with the existing sign poles there, and expecting that they'd be able to be reused is not unreasonable. So we don't really feel that this variance request was created by the petitioner. Those poles had been used in the past for 20-foot signs, so buying the property and thinking that they could be used was not unreasonable. Variance criteria 4 is that the variance would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. And And so the property, as I mentioned, it occupies this site that's in sort of a, right on the edge between a residential area and a commercial area. So having a tall sign right on the edge, it's debatable if that would affect the character of the community. We do want to point out, though, that the Philo Road business corridor has seen quite a bit of investment in terms of streetscaping, pedestrian improvements, pedestrian islands, crosswalks, new bus stops and benches. The city has made a conscious effort to really make the area more pedestrian friendly and just more aesthetically pleasing. So while there are some existing non-conforming signs along the Philo Road corridor, I think that over time we'll see those get into conformance with the new sign code. And there is one sign, there's a McDonald's sign out there that was brought down in height, and it actually looks pretty good and matches with the aesthetics of the corridor. So would this sign alter the essential character of the neighborhood? Currently, probably not, but if you were to allow a 20-foot sign right now, while these changes are going on to bring other signs along Philo Road into conformance, we feel that it might have some effect on the character going forward. Number 5 is a question if the variance would cause a nuisance to adjacent properties. We don't feel that this would cause a nuisance. There is a property owner to the west of the property that wrote a letter expressing his desire to file. I think he was filing a petition against this variance, but his reasonings were because the sign wouldn't match up with our zoning ordinance, and they had nothing to do with the sign actually being a nuisance to adjacent property owners. Variance criteria 6 is that the variance represents generally the minimum deviation from the zoning ordinance. And given that the existing sign poles are 20 feet high, without any structural alterations, I think by definition, this would represent the minimum deviation to install a 20-foot sign on those poles. So to sum up, we feel that certain variance components would be met if this variance were allowed, but other ones we don't feel that, especially with regard to the special circumstances, we don't really feel that this variance meets those criteria. So the options that you have are to either forward this on to the City Council with a recommendation of approval based on the findings in this memo and in my report. You can forward it on to the Council with certain terms and conditions, and we'd ask you to articulate those should you attach terms and conditions to it, or you can deny the variance request, and we'd also request that you articulate your reasoning why. So I can field any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff?
Question. I realize that it would be very difficult to police all the signs that are taken down. But has it ever happened that when a sign is taken down and the poles still are there, that the city has asked the property owners to remove them because it's past that time and it's...
I don't actually know the answer to that.
Okay.
I could check into that.
Because it did say that in the ordinance that, I think that's what it was saying, that they should be removed.
Right, yeah, if they're vacant or if they're not used for longer than 6 months, it does say...
90 days.
Yeah. Well, there's two things.
Okay.
If it's longer than 6 months, it's considered to be abandoned, and removal is required according to the ordinance.
Okay.
If a sign, like in this case where just a sign was removed for longer than 90 days, you can't reestablish that as a non-conforming use. but you're not required to remove it, is the way that I understand the ordinance.
Can you explain that again?
So the first one is that if it's not used for 6 months, you have to tear down the structure, the sign and the structure and everything. I guess the other one would be, that is a good question. The other one is that if a sign isn't used for 90 days, then you can't reestablish it. And I think that the intent of that is, say you have a sign where you can take the facing off of it, but you can actually leave the sign there. I think that's just
You mean
saying
leave
that
the post there?
after, pardon?
You can leave the post there?
Well, so if you had a sign that was just a box and it said, you know,
Oh, okay.
like it said Ace Hardware, and you just took off the front that said Ace Hardware,
Okay.
it's saying that after 90 days you couldn't put in a new sign on that existing structure. But if it were after 6 months, you would have to tear the whole structure down, I guess.
So, but you don't think these poles should have been taken down?
If you read the zoning ordinance, it says that if it's longer than 6 months, then they should be taken down.
Okay.
In practice, it's my understanding, and I've only been here for
Okay.
less than a month, so I have the impression that it's hard to enforce, and it doesn't always get enforced.
But we wouldn't become, if they were down, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
True.
Nancy?
Yes, can the sign company use the existing poles but place the actual signage to meet the new code of 16 feet rather than 20?
Well, so the reason that they're requesting the variance is that they say to meet the 16-foot height would impose additional costs. I'm not sure what those costs are, and maybe the petitioner can give a better answer about that. But to meet the code, the poles, the upper 4 feet of those poles would have to be taken down regardless, so you couldn't just say put a sign in there and have the poles sticking up. So it'd have to be structurally altered, which it's not unreasonable to think that would cost more than just putting a sign on what's already there. So that's the main I think argument for this variance request are those additional costs.
Well, isn't the use of the sign to advertise the business and make the business more visible from both Philo Road and for anyone going along Colorado Avenue?
I would imagine so.
And it would seem that the higher the sign, the more the visibility, the more you could, promote.
Right, and I think that's why they're requesting the higher sign.
I noticed that Truly Fit, the exercise facility to the east, is in conformance with a small sign, and the dental office is in conformance with the monument sign.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those businesses could, if this were allowed, then propose to put higher signs in their businesses.
And I think that's the petitioner, or sorry, the property owner of the dental offices in his letter. He did. One of his main concerns was the precedent that this could set for allowing, non-conforming signs to be reestablished. When the intent of the new sign regulations was to change things over time.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions for staff? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And at this time, would anyone from the, do we have the petitioner here? Would you like to speak before the board?
just really wanted to touch on a couple of points.
I would like you to
Oh, sorry.
also state your name, please, and sign in.
I signed in back there.
Well, on
You
the
too.
paper at the speaker's desk, please. Is that mic working?
You gotta dig to the bottom. Got it. State my name, is that what you said?
Yes, please.
Diana Bubenik with Prairie Signs, representing Dollar Tree. Couple points I just wanted to touch on is the visibility issue with the changing of the code is you're trying to gear towards pedestrian traffic, but you also want vehicular traffic, and you want safe vehicular traffic. You want them to not see you at the last minute and turn right. You want to cover both bases, basically. That area, I drove by and drove around the neighborhood. I didn't see a single pedestrian walking, or they are more towards the Philo Road where people were sitting and eating, and the traffic was pretty heavy at that time. This was just about an hour and a half ago, and it was mostly vehicular traffic. It wasn't pedestrians, and you want cars to see you from as far back as possible so that they know where they're going. With that was just a point I felt I needed to make. Dollar Tree, though, the report that was submitted by the Planning Division, most of my arguments were, frankly, blown out of the water. So they would like to request that if the board is going to deny the major variance, that if they would at least entertain the idea of a minor variance with a 15% change in height, which would bring the sign to 18 foot, which would clear the fence and hopefully would satisfy a compromise by the board and the property owner. I don't think the property owner should be penalized for a structure that was left behind that they thought they could just reuse and recycle, so to speak. If Ace Hardware had left their cabinet there, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have needed to get a permit, because face replacements don't require a permit in the city of Urbana. They could have just put a face in there and been done with it, and no one would have been none the wiser. The sign would have still remained 20 foot, but because they took the cabinet down, that changed the whole scope of thing. If that cabinet sign was still there and they just took the faces out, they could have just put new faces in and no permit would have been required. So now they're kind of getting penalized because Ace Hardware took the cabinet but left the poles behind. The poles, if you look at the photographs, you can see that they taper at a certain level. So structurally, that's the structurally changes. We would have to cut them down and weld filler steel inside. And of course, that incurs more cost and time, and luckily our guys are experienced, they could figure that out, but it just wasn't anticipated by Dollar Tree. There's little brackets on there on the poles existing. The sign, the 5x10 sign fits right in between, sits on those 90-degree angles, bolts in, good to go, and they're in business. Another point I'd like to make is that place has been abandoned for over 2 years, so it was an empty lot, just probably falling in disrepair. So I would think that you would want the business to stick around and be relieved that it's now occupied and incurring revenue for the city and not penalizing them because someone else left something behind. Other than that, if it's going to be a straight-up denial, they would like to see if they could at least compromise and do a 15% minor variance at 18 foot, which is 18.4 foot, but 18 foot, so that it at least get clearance above the fence. And that is all.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Charles?
So you're dead against cutting the pole at 16 feet and making an alteration? That would not be Plan C?
It gets wider at the bottom, and
Right.
structurally, they typically do not manufacture cabinets to slide over. It basically, we'd have to do a saddle mount where it would have to slide over those poles, and they'd have to do something on the inside of the cabinet to secure it to the pole. It's really not ideal, but it could be done.
Right, at a certain expense, which nobody exactly knows what that is, but, okay.
Yeah, I'm not the
Right,
estimator.
right.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Stay here, Joanne.
Is there anyone else from the audience who wishes to speak on behalf or against? Yes. Did you swear in? Only one person swore in. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board is truthful and accurate to the best of your knowledge? Okay. Yes. Please state your name and sign in.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening. My name is Chi Fan Cheng. Myself and Dr. Barry Howe, we operate the dental clinic immediately west of the property. And we had written a letter, which is in front of you. I wondered if anybody has any questions about the letter. Also, I want to say that we are very happy that Dollar Tree had moved into this property, and we wish them the best in the success of their business. There are a lot of pedestrian traffic in this area. We're there every day. And so, also, if you drive around, walk around Philo Road, Colorado Avenue, the city had really putting a lot of investment in that area, and we deeply appreciate that. And if you drive around, walk around, most of the businesses are in compliance with the city's code and standards for the freestanding signs. If and when our business would like to install a sign that's freestanding, we certainly intend to comply with city's code. And I think with the new business coming in, it is a perfect time to comply to the city's codes and to have conformity and not set any precedents for different variances to the city's codes. As far as the visibility issue, the fence is owned by Dollar Tree. They could, that part I didn't understand, because they could take it down or reposition the fence if the visibility indeed is a concern. 16 feet is already much taller than the fence in the photograph here. Those are our points. Any questions about from the letter or from our point of view?
Thank you. I think your letter is very clear.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll move that the Zoning Board of Appeals deny ZBA case 2014 Major-03 variance to allow a sign that is 20 feet tall. Because of granted, it would create a special circumstance and would serve as a special privilege, as discussed in tonight's hearing and in the evidence presented in our packet.
Okay.
And, yeah, that's it.
And do we have a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Do we have discussion?
I'd just like to say that as far as the compromise to 18 feet, I think if that wants to be done, that you should approach staff with that as opposed to just us deciding that here tonight, and see what they have to say. And really, just from my opinion, we've decided in 2009 to start lowering these things and changing the basic nature of signs in the city, and we just need to kind of stick with that at this point.
Any other discussion?
I
Nancy?
just think that allowing the 20-foot sign would just create a precedence, and then we would have any business in that commercial residential area wanting to do the same kind of signage, which would then defeat our general ability to increase the aesthetics and improve the area.
Okay.
I'd like to say that what I remember about the sign ordinance changing was that it was a really big deal. It was discussed for a long time. There were lots of people who objected, who wanted, and there were other people who wanted it to be reduced, and we just need to go forward with that.
Okay. All right. Are we ready for a vote? May we have a roll call?
Ms. Utman?
Yes.
A yes vote is for denial.
Mr. Warmbrad?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
And Ms. Chester?
Yes.
Okay, that motion is denied and will not go before the city council. Any other new public hearings?
Oh, sorry. I will point out that with respect to the case that was continued, I'm not sure if this is the right time to mention that, but the case that was continued, they have scheduled a site inspection for their daycare facility, and they'll be getting a site inspection on Monday. And I believe that if they show that they can run a successful daycare with a handful of children, then they'll be able to come back in the next few months to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Is this an inspection as a home occupation?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm not the one who's handling this case. That's Jeff Engstrom, so I'm just going on memory. But it was advised that they show that they can have a conforming daycare facility of, I think it's 5 children or less, does not require a conditional use permit. So I think if they are able to do that effectively for a short while, then they can come and get the conditional use permit from the zoning board.
They can apply.
Yeah.
Not necessarily get it.
And do we have any new business this evening?
No.
Okay. And are there any staff reports?
No.
All right, then I think we can adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.